The smell of stale beer and desperation clung to my clothes as I pushed through the back door of Murphy's bar into the alley. 2 a.m., my feet ached, my back screamed, and I had exactly 4 hours before I needed to be at the coffee shop for the morning shift. 3 jobs, 7 days a week. And still, barely enough to keep the lights on and my father's commissary account funded. The November air bit through my thin jacket as I started the familiar walk to the subway, 12 blocks through Manhattan's financial district. Empty at this hour except for the occasional taxi and the people who had nowhere else to go. I kept my keys clutched between my fingers, my phone in my other hand, ready to dial 911. A woman alone at night. Learn to be prepared. I was 3 blocks from the bar when I noticed the black SUV. It crawled along the curb, matching my pace, engine purring like a predator, where my heart kicked into overdrive. I walked faster. The SUV accelerated slightly, still keeping pace. Every self-defense tip I'd ever read flooded my mind. Stay in lit areas, don't go to your car, scream if threatened, run toward people. But there were no people, just empty streets and dark windows. The SUV pulled ahead and stopped, blocking the sidewalk. I froze, calculating my options. Run back to the bar? Cross the street? My hand trembled as I raised my phone. The rear door opened. A man stepped out, and even in the dim streetlight, I could see he didn't belong in this neighborhood at 2 a.m. Tailored charcoal suit, probably worth more than I made in 6 months. Dark hair styled with precision. He moved with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no, never facing consequences. "Mia Santos," he said. Not a question, a statement. My throat went dry. "I don't know you, but I know you." His voice was smooth, with just a hint of an accent I couldn't place. "Italian, maybe? I know you work 3 jobs. I know you visit your father every other Sunday at Rikers Island. I know you send him exactly $200 a month for commissary, which leaves you with barely enough to eat." Ice flooded my veins. "Who are you?" He stepped closer, and I finally saw his face clearly. Sharp features, strong jaw, eyes so dark they looked black in the shadows. But it was the way he looked at me that made my skin prickle, like he was seeing through me, cataloguing every fear, every weakness. "My name is Dante Caruso." He said it, like I should recognize it, like the name itself was a weapon. I did recognize it. Everyone in certain circles knew that name, whispered it with a mixture of fear and respect. Dante Caruso had rebuilt his family's empire from ashes, turning rumors and wreckage into something legitimate and powerful. The details were vague, the kind of vague that meant asking questions was dangerous. "I don't want any trouble," I managed. "Neither do I." He reached into his jacket and I flinched, but he only pulled out a cream-colored business card. "Your father owes me a debt. A very old, very significant debt. My father's in prison. He has nothing. No." Dante's eyes locked onto mine and I felt pinned in place. "But you do." The words hung in the cold air between us. I shook my head, backing away. "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have anything to do with whatever my father did. On the contrary, he closed the distance I'd created in one smooth step. You have everything to do with it. Your education, your apartment, your entire life was built on what he took from me." My back hit the brick wall of a building. Dante stopped just close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy that didn't belong in this grimy alley. "You have 48 hours, he said quietly. "Come to this address voluntarily or I'll make other arrangements." "And Mia?" His hand moved so fast I didn't see it, but suddenly I felt the press of cardstock against my palm. "Your father's safety in prison depends on your cooperation. Certain people owe me favors. It would be unfortunate if those favors were called in." The threat was clear, delivered in that same calm, reasonable tone. He turned and walked back to the SUV, movements unhurried, confident. The vehicle pulled away, leaving me alone in the alley with a business card I didn't remember accepting and a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. I looked down at the card. Heavy stock, gold embossed numbers. An address in the financial district. And below it, In elegant script, "Your father destroyed my life. Now you're going to help me rebuild it." My hand shook as I pulled out my phone and Googled Dante Caruso. The results made my blood run cold. 48 hours. The countdown had already begun. The address led me to a glass tower that pierced the Manhattan skyline. I stood outside for 10 minutes, staring up at my reflection in the mirrored surface, before forcing myself through the revolving doors. A security guard checked my ID against a list and directed me to a private elevator. The ride to the 30th floor was smooth and silent. When the doors opened, I stepped directly into a penthouse office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Dante Caruso sat behind a massive desk, studying documents with focused intensity. He looked different in daylight, more dangerous somehow. The navy suit was perfectly tailored, emphasizing broad shoulders and a presence that filled the entire space. "You came," he said, without looking up. "You didn't leave me much choice." "There's always a choice." He set down his pen and finally met my gaze. "You could have run. But you didn't, because you want to know the truth." I hated that he was right. He gestured to a leather chair. "Sit." I remained standing. "Just tell me what my father did." Dante's jaw tightened. He opened a drawer and removed a thick folder, placing it on the desk between us with deliberate care. 15 years ago, my father was arrested for money laundering and fraud," he began, his voice cold and factual. "The prosecution's case relied entirely on financial documents that proved illegal. Transactions through our family's import business." He opened the folder, revealing trial transcripts and photographs. "Those documents were fabricated by a forensic accountant paid $300,000 to destroy us." My stomach dropped. "No, Thomas Santos." Dante pushed a transcript toward me. "Your father testified under oath that his analysis was thorough, that the evidence was authentic. The jury believed him. They sentenced my father to 20 years. His voice hardened. He died in prison 4 years later. Untreated cancer. The paper trembled in my hands as I read my father's testimony, his signature at the bottom. "My mother followed him 2 years after that," Dante continued, softer now but no less devastating. "Depression. Sleeping pills. The official report said accidental overdose." He leaned forward. "Your father took everything from me. My family. My name. My future. I was 20 years old and suddenly alone with nothing but a reputation as the son of a criminal." "I was 11, I whispered. You didn't know where the money came from." His smile was cruel. "That 300,000 paid for your private school, your college fund, your entire life. Every advantage you had was built on my family's destruction." He slid another folder across the desk. Inside were surveillance photos, me leaving work, buying groceries, visiting my father at Rikers. Dozens of them, time-stamped over months. My blood turned to ice. "What do you want from me?" Dante stood and moved to the windows, hands in his pockets. "I spent 15 years rebuilding, making the Caruso name mean something besides crime." He turned, backlit by the morning sun. "Now I want legitimacy, respect, and you're going to help me get it." "How?" "You have a finance degree. You understand the systems your father used against my family." He approached, circling my chair. "You'll work for me. 1 year. Use your skills to help rebuild what he destroyed, and if I refuse..." He placed a prison incident report on top of the photos, my father's name at the top. "Rikers is dangerous," Dante said quietly. "Especially for former law enforcement consultants. Your father's been lucky so far. Protected, even." His dark eyes met mine. "Refuse me, and I make one phone call. Within 24 hours, certain inmates learn about his testimony in other cases. Information that would make him extremely unpopular." The threat stole my breath. "You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a choice." He returned to his desk and produced a contract. 1 year as my senior financial analyst. I'll provide an apartment. You'll be available when I need you. He pushed the document toward me with an expensive pen. "In return, your father stays safe. At the end of the year, you walk away." My hands shook as I stared at the signature line. "What's to stop you from hurting him anyway?" My word. Something flickered in his expression. I don't need to hurt him, Mia. He's already in prison. He's already lost everything. This isn't about him anymore. He leaned forward. This is about you paying his debt. I picked up the pen, feeling its weight. 1 year, I said. 1 year, Dante agreed. I signed, and the moment the ink dried, satisfaction flashed in his eyes. I'd just sold myself to the devil, and he knew it. 24 hours after signing the contract, my entire life had been dismantled and reassembled according to Dante Caruso's specifications. I stood in the center of an apartment that occupied the entire 27th floor of his building, 3 floors below his penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Manhattan that probably cost more per month than I'd made in a year. Hardwood floors gleamed beneath minimalist furniture that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. The kitchen was sleek and modern, all stainless steel and marble countertops. My studio apartment, with its broken radiator and water-stained ceiling, might as well have existed in another universe. Everything fits? A woman's voice made me turn. Dante's assistant, she'd introduced herself as Sophia, stood in the doorway. Tablet in hand, expression professionally neutral. I glanced at the walk-in closet, where an entirely new wardrobe hung in perfect order. Suits, blouses, shoes still in their boxes, all in my exact size, which shouldn't have surprised me given the surveillance photos. But seeing the tangible evidence of how thoroughly he'd studied me made my skin crawl. It's fine, I managed. Sophia tapped something on her tablet. Mr. Caruso expects you in the office at 7 a.m. Your company credit card and building access are on the kitchen counter. A car will be waiting downstairs at 6:45. She looked up, and for just a moment, something like sympathy flickered in her eyes. Don't be late. After she left, I sank onto the leather couch, still wearing yesterday's clothes because I couldn't bring myself to put on anything he'd chosen for me. This apartment, this life fit, was beautiful and suffocating in equal measure. A golden cage. The first week passed in a blur of meetings, spreadsheets, and Dante's constant presence. My official title was Senior Financial Analyst. But my real job was clear: legitimize Caruso Holdings' business ventures. Find legal pathways through complex financial structures, make the empire he'd rebuilt look clean. I was good at it. Better than I wanted to be. The other analysts kept their distance, speaking to me only when necessary. They knew I hadn't interviewed for this position, hadn't climbed any corporate ladder. Everyone understood I was there because Dante Caruso wanted me there, and that made me either dangerous or pitiable, probably both. Dante himself was everywhere and nowhere. He'd appear in my office doorway without warning, reading over my shoulder as I worked. He'd summon me to his penthouse office at random hours to review documents that could have waited until morning. He watched me constantly during meetings in the elevator, across the conference table, with an intensity that made my pulse race and my hands shake. It wasn't just calculation in his eyes. There was something darker, more personal. Like he was waiting for something, testing me in ways I didn't understand. On my third night, I was standing in my apartment kitchen, staring at the expensive appliances I didn't know how to use, when a knock echoed through the space. I checked the peephole, and my heart stuttered. Dante stood in the hallway, tie loosened, jacket gone, holding takeout bags and a bottle of wine. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. It's midnight, I'm aware. He held up the bags. Chinese food. I figured you haven't been eating properly. He was right. My stomach had been in knots for days. But that didn't explain why he was here. What do you want? I asked. To talk. He met my gaze, and something in his expression was different. Less controlled. If we're going to work together, we should get to know each other. We're not working together. I'm working for you. There's a difference. Semantics. He moved past me into the apartment, setting the food on the kitchen counter with the ease of someone who owned the space, which technically he did. Open the wine. I'll get plates. I don't want Mia. He turned, and the use of my first name, spoken in that low voice, silenced me. You haven't eaten a real meal in 3 days. You've lost weight you couldn't afford to lose. So sit down, eat, and then we'll talk. Against my better judgment, I found myself obeying. Maybe because I was exhausted. Maybe because the food smelled incredible. Maybe because some part of me was curious about what Dante Caruso wanted to know. He poured wine into glasses I hadn't known were in the cabinet, then sat across from me at the small dining table. The domestic normalcy of it felt surreal. Start with why, he said, taking a sip. Why what? His dark eyes held mine. Why your father did it. The money couldn't have been the only reason. $300,000 is significant. But for a man with his credentials, there were easier ways to earn it. He leaned forward. So tell me, Mia, what was worth destroying my family? The question hung between us, sharp and unavoidable. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I realized I didn't know the answer. The late-night dinners became routine. Dante would appear at my door around 11, always with food, always with that same quiet intensity. We'd sit at my kitchen table, surrounded by laptops and documents. And somewhere between reviewing financial statements and discussing corporate strategy. He'd tell me stories about his father. Alessandro Caruso hadn't been a saint, Dante admitted. He'd operated in grey areas, made deals with people who lived outside the law. But the charges that destroyed him, the elaborate money laundering scheme, the fraudulent transactions, those had been fabricated. He was set up by the Marconi family, Dante said one night, pushing his half-eaten Thai food aside. They wanted to eliminate competition, take over our import routes. So they paid off a prosecutor, manufactured evidence, and found an expert witness willing to validate their lies. My father, I said quietly. Your father. Dante's jaw tightened. The case fell apart without those financial documents. My father's lawyer tried to have them thrown out, questioned the analysis, but the jury believed Thomas Santos. He was credible, respected. A family man with an 11-year-old daughter. His eyes found mine. They believed him over us. I set down my wine glass, my appetite gone. Tell me about your mother. Something shifted in his expression. Vulnerability, quickly masked. Elena. She was a teacher. Literature. She used to read to me in Italian before bed, even after I learned English. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. After my father was arrested, she tried to keep everything normal. Kept working, kept paying bills. But people talked. Parents didn't want their children taught by the wife of a criminal. She lost her job. Eventually. The school claimed budget cuts. He drained his wine. By the time my father died, she'd stopped eating, stopped sleeping. I tried to help, but I was barely keeping myself together. His voice dropped. I found her on a Tuesday morning. Empty pill bottle on the nightstand. She'd left a note apologizing for not being strong enough. My throat tightened. Dante, I'm sorry. Don't. The word was sharp. Don't apologize for something you didn't do. But I was starting to understand that my father's actions had consequences that rippled far beyond a courtroom. They'd destroyed real people, shattered a family, created the man sitting across from me, brilliant, ruthless, and utterly alone. The next day, I started digging into my father's old case files during my lunch breaks. What I found made me physically sick. A bank transfer from an offshore account to my father's savings. $300,000 deposited 2 weeks after Alessandro Caruso's conviction. The same month my acceptance letter from private school arrived. I pulled up more records. Tuition payments, college fund deposits, the down payment on the small house my father bought before his own arrest for embezzlement years later. Everything I'd achieved, every opportunity, every advantage, had been built on blood money. That Saturday, I took the bus to Rikers Island. My father looked smaller than I remembered, greyer. The prison jumpsuit hung loose on his frame, and his hand shook slightly when he picked up the phone on his side of the glass partition. Mia, his smile was weary. Twice in 1 month. Must be something important. Tell me about Alessandro Caruso. The smile vanished. Color drained from his face. Where did you hear that name? Answered the question, Dad. My voice was steadier than I felt. 15 years ago. Federal trial. You testified that financial documents were authentic when you knew they were fake. His eyes darted around the visiting room. You don't understand. $300,000. I leaned closer to the glass. That's what they paid you. And you used it to send me to private school, to pay for college, to build a life on someone else's destruction. I did it for you, his voice cracked. We were drowning in debt. Your mother's medical bills before she left, I had nothing. Mia, nothing. And they offered me a way out. A way out that required you to destroy an innocent man. Innocent? He laughed bitterly. Alessandro Caruso was many things, but innocent wasn't one of them. Maybe the specific charges were manufactured, but he was dirty. They all were. That doesn't justify. I had a choice, he interrupted. Watch my daughter grow up in poverty, barely surviving, or take their money and give you a future. What would you have done? The question hit like a physical blow. Because wasn't I doing the same thing now? Trading my freedom for his safety? Did you know his wife killed herself? I asked quietly. Did you know his son? He was 17. Dad lost everything. My father's face crumpled. I didn't think. I tried not to think about them. I just focused on you. On giving you opportunities I never had. Opportunities bought with their suffering. Tears burned my eyes. I'm working for him now. Dante Caruso. He found me, and now I'm paying your debt. Horror washed over his features. Mia, no. What did you agree to? What I had to. I stood, the chair scraping against linoleum, just like you did. Wait. He pressed his palm against the glass. Mia, please? I was trying to protect you. I looked at my father, this man who'd raised me alone, who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped with homework and told me I could be anything I wanted. This man who'd also lied under oath and destroyed a family for money. And look how that turned out, I said. I walked away from his desperate calls, from his apologies, from the truth I'd finally forced him to admit. He'd do it again. Even knowing the cost, even seeing the consequences, he'd still choose the money. Which meant Dante had been right all along. My father was exactly the kind of man who deserved to pay. After the prison visit, something changed in me. I stopped showing up to work with resentment weighing down every step. Instead, I arrived early, stayed late, and threw myself into the financial labyrinth of Caruso Holdings with a purpose that had nothing to do with my contract. This wasn't about Dante's revenge anymore. It was about my own redemption. If my father's lies had destroyed the Caruso family, then I would help rebuild what was lost. Not because I was forced to, but because it was the right thing to do. Dante noticed the shift immediately. You're different, he said one evening, finding me still at my desk at 9 p.m., surrounded by spreadsheets and legal documents. I'm focused, I replied without looking up. There's a loophole in the Marconi settlement that could recover assets your family lost. I just need to prove the original seizure was based on fraudulent evidence. He moved closer, reading over my shoulder. How long have you been working on this? 3 days. I pulled up another file. If I can establish a clear chain of fabrication from the documents my father validated, we might be able to petition for restitution. Dante's hand came to rest on my shoulder, warm through the thin fabric of my blouse. Mia, when did you last sleep? Sleep is optional. Justice isn't. His fingers tightened slightly. Go home. Not yet. I'm close to something. That wasn't a request. But his voice lacked its usual command. If anything, he sounded almost concerned. I finally looked up at him. Why do you care if I sleep? Something flickered in his dark eyes. Because you're no good to me exhausted. It should have sounded cold, pragmatic. Instead, it felt like a lie covering something deeper. The late nights became more frequent. We'd order dinner to the office, spread documents across the conference table, and work in a rhythm that felt increasingly natural. Dante would explain the history behind various business deals, and I'd find the legal pathways to legitimize them. His mind was sharp and strategic. Mine was detail-oriented and creative. Together, we were formidable. And somewhere between contract negotiations and corporate restructuring, the air between us began to shift. He started standing closer when reviewing documents, his presence a constant warmth at my back. His hand would brush mine when passing papers. In the elevator, the space felt smaller, charged with tension that had nothing to do with business. I caught him watching me sometimes, not with the calculating assessment from our first meeting, but with something that looked almost like wonder, quickly masked when I met his gaze. Then the Marconi family made their move. They filed an injunction trying to block Caruso Holdings from acquiring a shipping company that had once belonged to Alessandro. It was a strategic attack designed to remind everyone of the old accusations, to keep the Caruso name associated with crime. "They're trying to bury you again," I said, staring at the legal filing that had arrived via courier. "They're trying." Dante's voice was ice. The words on the screen blurred together, and I rested my head on my arms for just a moment. I woke to warmth surrounding me, the scent of expensive cologne, and the sensation of being carried. My eyes fluttered open to find Dante's face inches from mine, his jaw tight with concentration as he maneuvered through a doorway. "What are you doing?" My voice was rough with exhaustion. "Fell asleep at your desk." He laid me gently on the leather couch in his office, then draped his suit jacket over me like a blanket. "You've been awake for 48 hours, Mia. The filing can wait until you've slept." He crouched beside the couch, eye level with me. "You've done enough. It's not finished. Then we'll finish it together. After you rest." His hand moved as if to brush hair from my face, then stopped, hovering uncertainly before falling back to his side. I studied him in the dim office lighting. Exhaustion shadowed his features too. "When did you last sleep?" "Sleep is optional," he echoed my words with the ghost of a smile. "Justice isn't." "Dante, why are you looking at me like that?" I whispered. He was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching mine. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible, almost reluctant. "Because you're making this complicated." "What's complicated?" He stood abruptly, putting distance between us. "Everything. Get some rest, Mia. We have work to do." He left me alone in his office, wrapped in his jacket that still held his warmth, my heart pounding with a question I was afraid to answer. When had this stopped being about revenge and started being about something neither of us knew how to name? The gala celebrating Caruso Holdings' acquisition of the shipping company was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Dante had a tuxedo delivered to my apartment, along with a gown that probably cost more than my college tuition, midnight blue silk, that draped like water and made me feel like someone I barely recognized. When I stepped off the elevator, Dante was waiting in the lobby. He turned, and something flashed in his eyes that made my breath catch. "You look... He stopped, seeming to search for words. "Beautiful." "It's the dress," I said automatically. "No." He offered his arm, his gaze intense. "It's not." The museum had been transformed into something from a dream. String quartets played beneath vaulted ceilings. Champagne flowed freely. Manhattan's elite moved through galleries of priceless art, speaking in hushed tones about deals and power, and Dante moved through it all like he owned it. Charming investors with ease, commanding respect from men who once would have crossed the street to avoid him. The transformation was remarkable, from the grief-stricken teenager in those old photos to this man who dominated every room he entered. "Mr. Caruso," a silver-haired man approached, already drunk despite the early hour. "And who is this lovely creature?" "Mia Santos, my senior financial analyst." Dante's hand settled at the small of my back, possessive. "The architect behind our recent successes." The man's eyes raked over me in a way that made my skin crawl. Beautiful and brilliant. Quite the combination. His hand reached for my arm. Dante's grip on my waist tightened. "Mr. Harrison was just leaving," he said, voice dropping to something dangerous. "Weren't you, Gerald?" The temperature in our small circle plummeted. 2 security guards appeared as if summoned by thought alone. Yes, of course. Harrison retreated, face pale. I watched him go, then looked up at Dante. What just happened? He forgot his manners. Dante's jaw was tight. His investment offer will be declined tomorrow. You're going to cost him a deal because he was drunk and inappropriate. I'm going to cost him a deal because he touched what's mine. The words hung between us, loaded with meaning neither of us was ready to examine. As the evening wore on, I saw him truly operate for the first time. Not the controlled man in his office, but Dante in his element, powerful, magnetic, ruthless when needed, and charming when it served his purpose. And I realized with startling clarity that I was seeing the man he'd become despite everything my father had taken from him. Near midnight, he led me to a private terrace overlooking the city. The sounds of the gala faded behind us, replaced by the distant hum of traffic and the rhythm of our breathing. You did well tonight, Dante said, handing me a glass of champagne. I barely said anything. You didn't have to. They saw you beside me. That was enough. He leaned against the railing, his profile sharp against the city lights. Do you know what tonight represented? Your victory. Our victory. He turned to me. None of this would have been possible without your work. You found the loopholes, built the legal framework. You gave me back what was stolen. The champagne and the night air made me bold. Is that all I am to you? A means to an end? You were supposed to be. His voice was rough. Revenge was supposed to be simple. Bring you into my world. Use your skills. Watch you carry the weight of your father's sins. He moved closer, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. But nothing about you has been simple, Mia. What are you saying? I'm saying that somewhere between those late nights and watching you throw yourself into fixing what he broke, you stopped being a tool for revenge. His hand rose to cut my cheek, thumb tracing my jawline. You became something I didn't plan for. My heart hammered against my ribs. Dante, tell me to stop, he murmured, his face inches from mine. Tell me this is just business, that you feel nothing, and I'll step back. I'll maintain every professional boundary. I should have said it. Should have reinforced the walls between us. But standing there in the moonlight, his warmth surrounding me, I couldn't form the words. I can't tell you that, I whispered. He kissed me then, not calculated or controlled, but desperate and hungry and achingly real. His hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer as I melted into him. The city spun around us, and nothing existed except his mouth on mine. The racing of our hearts, the certainty that we'd just crossed a line we could never uncross. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. This changes everything, he said. I know. We barely made it back to his penthouse, hands and mouths urgent with need. But, as dawnlight filtered through his windows, my phone shattered the moment with an incoming message from an unknown number. I reached for it with trembling hands, Dante reading over my shoulder. The message contained a photo of my contract, the one I'd signed in his office. Below it, a single line. Coercion is illegal. Withdraw from Caruso Holdings, or everyone learns how he really acquired his senior analyst. You have 48 hours. Dante's entire body went rigid, fury radiating from him. Someone knew, and they were using it to destroy everything we'd built. The blackmail message was just the beginning. Within 24 hours, a lawyer representing concerned parties contacted Caruso Holdings, demanding I be released from my employment without prejudice or retaliation. The letter was carefully worded, stopping just short of explicit accusations, while making the implications crystal clear. Then the FBI called. Agent Michelle Torres introduced herself with professional courtesy that did nothing to hide the steel beneath. She wanted to discuss the nature of my employment arrangement with Dante Caruso. Voluntary interview, of course. But her tone suggested refusal would be noted. I sat across from Dante in his office, the letter and the agent's card between us on his desk. He hadn't spoken in 5 minutes, his expression carved from ice. It's the Marconi family, I said finally. It has to be. We've blocked their injunction, exposed their involvement in the original case against your father. I know who it is. His voice was flat, emotionless. The warmth from last night had vanished completely, replaced by the cold calculation I remembered from our first meeting. The question is how they got the contract. Does it matter? We need to pack your things. He stood abruptly, buttoning his suit jacket. Anton will drive you to the apartment. Take only what you need. I stared at him. What are you talking about? I'm terminating your contract effective immediately. He wouldn't meet my eyes. You'll receive 6 months severance. Your father's protection remains in place. But you're leaving New York tonight. You're sending me away? I'm keeping you safe. Finally, he looked at me, and what I saw in his face made my chest tighten. Fear. Carefully controlled, but unmistakable. If the FBI builds a case around coercion or trafficking, you could face charges as a victim who was forced to participate in financial crimes. Your career would be destroyed. Your life would be over. So you're just giving up, letting them win? His jaw clenched. I'm protecting you from the consequences of my actions. This is my fight, Mia. It always was. That's bullshit. I stood, fury replacing shock. You don't get to kiss me, make me care about you, and then push me away the moment things get difficult. Last night was a mistake. The words hit like a slap. A mistake. Yes, but something flickered in his eyes. Pain, quickly buried. This is what I do. I destroy things. People. I should never have brought you into this world. Stop it. I moved around the desk, forcing him to look at me. You're reverting to the man you were in that first meeting. Cold. Controlled. But I know better now. I know you know nothing. His voice was harsh. You're a job that got complicated. A debt I'm choosing to forgive. That's all. Liar. I saw his mask crack just for a second. You're scared. Not of the FBI or the Marconi family. You're scared of what you feel for me. Mia, no. I grabbed the blackmail letter, crumpling it in my fist. I'm not running, and neither are you. We're going to fight this. There's nothing to fight. They have evidence of coercion. The contract, the surveillance photos, probably recordings of our conversations. The moment Agent Torres starts digging, she'll find everything. Then we give her something better to find. I pulled out my laptop. Opening files I'd been building for the past 3 days, since the first threatening message arrived. I'd been tracking financial movements through shell corporations linked to the Marconi family. Bribes paid to officials involved in your father's trial, including payments to the prosecutor who built the case. Dante's eyes widened as he scanned the documents. How did you... I'm good at my job. Better than my father ever was. I pulled up more files. I also found the real architect behind your father's frame-up. Not just the Marconi family, there's someone higher up. Someone who benefited from both your family's destruction and from keeping you distracted with revenge. Who? Your father's former business partner, Vincent Russo, your uncle. The color drained from Dante's face. Vincent died 5 years ago. Did he? I showed him a series of transactions dated within the past year, because someone using his offshore accounts has been very busy. Financing the Marconi family's operations, funding the current blackmail campaign. I met his eyes. Your uncle faked his death, Dante, and he's been orchestrating everything from the shadows. Silence stretched between us as he processed the information. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. Why would he do this? Because your father was the legitimate one, the respectable one. With him gone and you focused on revenge, Vincent had free rein to build his own empire using the Caruso name as cover. I spread the documents across his desk. But now you're succeeding, becoming legitimate again. That's a threat to him. Dante stared at the evidence, then at me. You've been investigating this alone. I wasn't going to let them destroy what we built. I moved closer. You said I was making this complicated. You were right. It's complicated and messy and probably going to explode in our faces. I placed my hand over his on the desk, but I'm not walking away. So stop trying to protect me and start trusting me. Something shifted in his expression, the ice cracking, revealing the man beneath. This is dangerous, he said quietly. Everything about you is dangerous. I squeezed his hand. That hasn't stopped me yet. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Then his phone buzzed. His expression hardened as he read the message. What is it? He turned the screen toward me. Another photo, my father in the prison infirmary, unconscious, bandages around his head. The message below read, "Withdraw your statement to the FBI, or next time he won't wake up." My blood turned to ice. They got to him. Yes, Dante's voice was deadly calm. Which means we're out of time. I was on a flight to Ohio within 2 hours, Dante beside me in the private jet he'd chartered. Neither of us spoke during the journey. My mind kept replaying that image, my father unconscious, bleeding, paying for my defiance. At the prison hospital, a doctor met us with grim news. Fractured skull, internal bleeding, induced coma to reduce brain swelling. He might recover. He might not. I stood beside his bed, machines beeping steadily, and felt the weight of every choice I'd made since signing Dante's contract. "This is my fault," I whispered. "No." Dante's hand found mine. "This is mine. I brought you into this world. I made you a target. I chose to stay. I chose to fight." I looked at our joined hands. I'd choose it again. His grip tightened. "Even knowing the cost?" "Even then." We flew back to New York that night. While I tried to sleep in the plane's cabin, Dante made calls quiet. Intense conversations in Italian that I couldn't fully follow. But I caught names, heard the shift in his tone from requesting to commanding. By the time we landed, something had changed in his posture. A decision made, a price accepted. "What did you do?" I asked as his driver navigated through pre-dawn Manhattan. "What was necessary?" His voice was flat. "Your father will have round-the-clock protection. Former military. People who owe me favors." "What kind of favors?" "The expensive kind." He finally looked at me. "I called in debts I've been saving for years. Made promises I didn't want to make. Your father is safe, Mia. But it cost me." Understanding dawned cold and sick in my stomach. "You made deals with dangerous people." "Yes. The same kind of people you've been trying to distance yourself from. The ones who make your business look illegitimate." "Yes. Dante, it was worth it." His voice was fierce. "He's your father. You love him despite everything he did. I wasn't going to let you lose him the way I lost mine." Tears burned my eyes. "You sacrificed everything we've been working toward. I sacrificed business reputation, not you." He cupped my face, forcing me to meet his gaze. "Those are not equivalent. Agent Torres will find out. The FBI will let them." His thumb brushed away the tear that escaped. "I'll rebuild again if I have to. But I won't rebuild on your grief." The enormity of what he'd done settled over me. He'd chosen me over revenge, over legitimacy, over everything he'd spent 15 years fighting for. "Why?" I whispered. "You know why." I did. I could see it in his eyes, feel it in the way he held me like something precious and breakable. Back at his penthouse, we spread the evidence across his dining table: financial records, shell company documents, everything linking Vincent Russo to the conspiracy. "We give this to Agent Torres," I said. "Everything. Show her that the Marconi family and your uncle have been operating together. That they've framed your father and are now trying to frame you. They'll ask how you obtained it. I'll tell them the truth. That I was investigating corporate fraud as part of my job. They won't believe the job was legitimate. Then we make them believe it." I pulled up my employment records, showing months of legitimate work product. I've been documenting everything. Every project, every analysis, every legal recommendation. My work speaks for itself. Dante studied the files, something like hope flickering in his expression. "This might actually work. It will work." I met his eyes. "But we need more than evidence. We need Vincent to confess. He will if he thinks he's won." I pulled out my phone, showing him the blackmail messages. "They want me to withdraw from the investigation, so I will, publicly. And then we wait for Vincent to get comfortable enough to make a mistake." Understanding dawned on Dante's face. "You want to set a trap?" "Exactly. We give them what they want, then prove they coerced us into it." I opened a new document. "But I need your help. And I need to know ... I hesitated. What you said on the plane. About making promises. What exactly did you promise? Dante was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with resignation. Protection for your father required leverage with people inside the prison system. People connected to families I've been trying to avoid. He met my eyes. I agreed to facilitate certain business transactions. Nothing violent, but not exactly legal either. The kind of thing that could undo everything if it comes to light. How long? 6 months of services. Starting immediately. My heart sank. Dante, I'd do it again. He pulled me close, his forehead against mine. Every single time. Your father's life is worth more than my reputation. I wrapped my arms around him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against mine. This man, who'd started as my captor, had become something I never expected. A protector, someone willing to sacrifice everything for me. But as I held him, my phone buzzed with a message that made my blood freeze. It was a video file from an unknown number. I opened it with shaking hands. The footage showed Dante in a parking garage late at night, meeting with known criminals. Audio of him agreeing to the protection deal. Every word, every promise, every compromise recorded and ready to destroy him. Below the video, withdraw or we send this to the FBI and every major news outlet. You have 12 hours. I looked up at Dante, watching his jaw clench as he watched the video over my shoulder. They'd been waiting for this. Waiting for him to make the exact choice that would condemn him. And I'd let him do it. I stared at the video, watching Dante condemn himself for me, and something inside me shattered. No, I whispered. No, this isn't happening. Dante took the phone from my trembling hands, his expression unreadable as he watched himself make promises that would destroy everything. When the video ended, he set the phone down with careful precision. It's done, he said quietly. They have what they need. Because of me. My voice broke. You made those deals to protect my father. And now they're using it to Mia. He gripped my shoulders. Look at me. This isn't your fault, isn't it? Tears streamed down my face. You were rebuilding your life, becoming legitimate, and I let you sacrifice it all for my father. The man who destroyed your family in the first place. I made my choice. A choice you wouldn't have had to make if I'd just walked away like you told me to. I pulled free, pacing the length of his penthouse. Vincent's been planning this from the start. He wanted you to care about me, wanted you to make yourself vulnerable, and I played right into it. Stop! Dante's voice was sharp. You're not responsible for my uncle's manipulations, but I am responsible for letting you fall on. Your sword for my father. I turned to face him. The same father who lied under oath and took blood money. Who said he'd do it all again even knowing what it cost your family. He's still your father. And you're... I stupped, the words catching in my throat. What? Dante moved closer. What am I, Mia? The man I love. But saying it now felt like another weapon Vincent could use against us. Someone who deserves better than this, I said instead. Dante's expression softened. He reached for me, but I stepped back. I need to think. I grabbed my laptop. There has to be something we're missing. Some way to... There isn't. His voice was resigned. They've won. I'll withdraw from my business ventures. You'll step away quietly. And maybe I can negotiate terms that don't destroy everything. You're giving up. I'm being realistic. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. I've been fighting for 15 years. Mia, maybe it's time to accept that some battles can't be won. No. The word came out fierce. You don't get to quit. Not after everything you've sacrificed, everything you've built. What else would you have me do? I opened my laptop, pulling up the files on Vincent Russo. We find leverage. Something Vincent values more than destroying you. There's nothing. Everyone has pressure points. I started. Cross-referencing financial records, looking for patterns. Vincent faked his death 5 years ago. Why? What was he hiding from? Dante moved to my side, his interest piqued despite himself. The SEC was investigating him for securities fraud. If he'd been convicted, he would have lost everything. I pulled up archived news articles. But the investigation died with him. Case closed, assets frozen but untouchable because the suspect was deceased. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that Vincent can't stay dead forever. Not if he wants to actually use the empire he's been building. I opened another file. These shell companies, they're sophisticated, but they all eventually trace back to someone. A real person who has to sign documents, appear in meetings. I dug deeper, following digital breadcrumbs through layers of corporate structure. And then I found it. Sebastian Vincent, I said, turning the laptop toward Dante, CEO of Meridian Holdings. Look at the signature on these documents. Dante leaned in, studying the elegant scrawl. His entire body went rigid. That's Vincent's handwriting. It's more than that. I pulled up a photo from Meridian's website, a silver-haired man in his 60s with sharp features. Digital aging software. He changed his appearance, his name, but kept his signature the same. Arrogant enough to hide in plain sight. If we expose him, the SEC case reopens. His assets get seized. Everything he's built crumbles. I met Dante's eyes. But more than that, he goes to prison for fraud and faking his death. That's serious federal time. He'll retaliate. Release the video, destroy us both. Not if we move first. I started typing rapidly. We sent everything to Agent Torres. Not just Vincent's identity, but proof of the blackmail, the conspiracy, everything. We show her that we're victims being coerced, and we give her a much bigger target. Dante was quiet, processing. Torres will still have questions about your contract, about how our relationship started. Then we tell her the truth. I took his hand. All of it. Yes, you blackmailed me initially. Yes, the contract was coercioned, but somewhere along the way it became real. We fell in love while trying to undo our father's mistakes. I squeezed his fingers. That's not a crime. That's just ... human. Something shifted in his expression. You love me. It wasn't the time. Not with everything hanging in the balance. But I couldn't take the words back. And I didn't want to. Yes, I said simply. Which is why I'm not letting Vincent destroy you. Dante pulled me close, his kiss desperate and achingly tender. When we broke apart, determination had replaced the resignation in his eyes. Send it, he said. Everything. Let's end this. I compiled the files, Vincent's identity, the blackmail evidence, the financial crimes. All of it, and attached them to an email to Agent Torres. My finger hovered over the send button. Once I do this, there's no going back. Good. Dante's hand covered mine on the mouse. I'm tired of looking backward. Together we clicked send. For better or worse, the truth was now out of our hands. Agent Torres arrived at Dante's penthouse 6 hours after I sent the email, flanked by 2 other federal agents. I'd been pacing the entire time, running through worst-case scenarios, while Dante made calls to his lawyer. Miss Santos. Mr. Caruso. Torres's expression was unreadable as she entered. We need to talk. We sat in Dante's study, the same room where he'd first told me about my father's betrayal. Torres spread documents across the desk our evidence, alongside files the FBI had apparently been building independently. Vincent Russo, also known as Sebastian Vincent, was arrested 2 hours ago, she said, along with 3 members of the Marconi family and a dozen associates. The charges include conspiracy, fraud, extortion, and obstruction of justice. Relief flooded through me, but Torres wasn't finished. Which brings us to you two. Her gaze moved between us. Your initial employment contract was clearly coercive. That's a crime, Mr. Caruso. I know. Dante's voice was steady. I'm prepared to face consequences. However, Torres continued, Miss Santos's work product over the past month shows genuine expertise and legitimate corporate analysis. Her testimony about being coerced into investigating fraud actually strengthens our case against the conspiracy. She leaned back. The question is whether you two are victims who were manipulated, or willing participants in a larger criminal enterprise. We're victims who fought back, I said firmly. Everything I did was to expose the truth about what happened to Alessandro Caruso, about what my father did. Torres studied me for a long moment. Your father woke up this morning. He's going to recover. The news hit me like a physical blow. He's okay? Stable, and willing to testify about the bribes he received 15 years ago. She pulled out another document. With his cooperation and Vincent Russo's arrest, we're reopening Alessandro Caruso's case. Posthumous exoneration is likely. Dante's hand found mine under the table, gripping tight. What about the protection deals? He asked quietly. The ones I made to keep Thomas Santos safe. Those arrangements were made under duress. Blackmail nullifies the agreements. Torres's expression softened slightly. You're not off the hook entirely, Mr. Caruso. There will be scrutiny, investigations into your business practices. But you gave us Vincent Russo and exposed a 15-year conspiracy. That counts for something. After she left, Dante and I sat in silence, processing everything. It's over, I whispered. Not over. He turned to me. Just beginning. 6 months later. The press conference room was packed with reporters as Dante took the podium. Behind him, a large screen displayed the words, "The Caruso Foundation, Justice and Redemption, Today." Caruso Holdings announces a partnership with the National Registry of Exonerations, he began, his voice steady and clear. We're establishing a fund to support families affected by wrongful convictions. Legal fees, living expenses, counseling services, whatever is needed to help rebuild lives destroyed by false accusations. I stood in the wings, watching him command the room. The foundation was funded by settlements from the conspiracy case, Vincent's seized assets, Marconi family reparations, everything liquidated and redirected toward helping others. My father sat in the front row, still recovering but present. He'd been released early for his cooperation, and we were slowly, painfully rebuilding our relationship. Some days were easier than others. Some days I could barely look at him. But we were trying. After the press conference, Dante found me on the roof terrace of Caruso Holdings. The city sprawled before us, afternoon sun turning the glass towers gold. How did I do? He asked. You were perfect. I leaned into him as his arms wrapped around me. Your mother would be proud. I hope so. He was quiet for a moment. Mia, there's something I need to ask you. You're not going to propose right now, are you? Because the timing is terrible and I haven't even... No. He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Not yet, but I want to know. Do you regret it? Any of it? I thought about the past year. The coercion, the pain, the impossible choices. But also the partnership we'd forged. The love that had grown in the spaces between revenge and redemption. I regret how it started, I said honestly. But not where we ended up. Neither do I. He turned me to face him. So help me build the rest of it. Not because of a contract or a debt, but because you want to. I looked into his amber eyes and saw not the calculating man who'd blackmailed me, but the person he'd become through our shared struggle. Still scarred, still imperfect, but trying to be better. Partners? I asked, echoing that first tentative agreement. Partners, he confirmed, and this time when I said yes, it was a beginning I chose freely built not on revenge or obligation, but on the hardest truth of all, that love could grow even in the ruins our fathers left behind. We couldn't change the past, but together we could rebuild something honest from its wreckage, and that was enough.